Chopper Delta, preparing to drop off at area E95070. Over.
What are they? When I think of an actual zombie outbreak, nothing comes to my mind more than Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. This beginning sequence is still great. Corny sometimes, but great. Especially the ending with the streets completely decimated and the close-up of the SWAT helmet reflecting a zombie still walking. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is a survival horror video game by Capcom, released in 1999 on the original PlayStation console. You play as Jill Valentine, a member of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS for short, division of the Raccoon City Police Department and survivor during the Arklay Mountains investigation. Jill is attempting to escape Raccoon City as the town is being overtaken by the same tragedy that befell the Arklay Mountains. However, her plan is foiled by an unexpected encounter with a dangerous bioweapon known as Nemesis. Jill not only has to avoid the Walking Dead, but a colossal menace seeking to claim her life. When I was little, I hated being scared with horror entertainment. I would literally crawl into my bed and pull the covers over my head, wishing for the bad things to go away. In a sense, I was a huge fraidy cat. I still remember the times my dad would sit in the basement of our house at night, with the lights turned off, playing Resident Evil. The eerie sounds of the zombie moans coming from the television always made me run as fast as I could to my bed. All I could think as I huddled under my blanket was, what is so fun about being scared? My dad was a huge horror fanatic, just not the gore or slasher kind of horror. He loved being thrilled with the sense of danger and excitement that followed with horror. The tension between being able to defend yourself and confront something of unparalleled terror was exhilarating for him, or being terrified by some existence that was lurking nearby. He had a sense of over-dramatizing something scary in a fun way. I never thought I would pull myself to become a horror fanatic like he was, with my history of being a wuss. But then, he left this world on the strangest days of all days. October 31st, Halloween. An ironic and albeit fitting day for my dad to pass away. The heartbreaking and overbearing saddening sensation left me wanting to remember him in any way that I could. The answer came to me over the passing of time within my mourning. I swallowed my fear down like a glass of metal nails and began my journey into horror entertainment. The franchise I decided to start with was Resident Evil. I replicated what my dad did all those years ago. Sit in the basement with the lights turned off and playing the game alone. Little by little, I began to see what my dad enjoyed about horror entertainment. Like father, like son, I felt the power and strength coming to me to face a terror-inducing situation with bravery and a bit of luck. I am going to be straight up honest here. I think Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is the greatest and truest Resident Evil game of the entire franchise. When you put the words Resident and Evil together, you should realize the definitions of both individually. To put this in blatant terms, resident means living somewhere for a long period of time, and evil means something profoundly immoral. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis follows the protagonist Jill Valentine in her attempt to escape Raccoon City alive during a zombie outbreak. However, she is met with a significant obstacle that impedes her progress at every turn: Nemesis. Nemesis is a bioengineered, walking piece of mass destruction that cannot be killed by normal means. In fact, the only way to truly kill Nemesis is to bomb him with a thermonuclear warhead. Nemesis's goal is to search and eliminate every STARS member left alive. The immortal evil within the game is the party responsible for deploying Nemesis and setting Raccoon City into a dystopian mess. The story for the game depicts the events of Raccoon City from Jill Valentine's perspective, but what you are actually witnessing is the fall of a metropolitan city. The bigger picture here is that Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is not some isolated storyline. There is much more going on. You are not focusing on a single mansion in the mountains, traveling to some remote village in Europe, going to some faraway prison island, or going to this dusty town in the middle of Africa. You are literally watching a city become a zombie apocalypse that cannot be contained, which is far scarier than driving into Raccoon City as some rookie cop or biker chick and discovering some girl's dad is a monster. Jill Valentine shows vulnerability in her quest to escape Raccoon City. She is literally struggling to survive and escape with all her might.
Come on!
Ow, that killed! Just so you know, I'm not into that pain is pleasure thing, okay?
Just deal with it. That thing wants me dead. We've got to get out of here!
Nemesis is not some monster mash from a graveyard smash. He is a hulking beast that can exhibit intelligence far above capable means. His body can adapt to situations on the fly and is virtually indestructible. Aside from the main protagonist and antagonist, you get a side story about the pharmaceutical company known as Umbrella that is responsible for the zombie outbreak. A small team of hired mercenaries that work for Umbrella are allegedly tasked with helping any Raccoon City resident and escorting them to safety. However, their leader is actually an agent from Umbrella sent to recover and record data on biohazard creatures walking the town streets.
And you seem to be doing a pretty good job of looking out for yourself. How about helping out?
I have no intention of helping you.
Because we're nothing but pawns in all this?
In a manner of speaking, you are. Our employers wanted a detailed analysis of the zombie beings which were created through infection by the T-virus.
You're saying that they deliberately sent in a military unit to be butchered by their creations?
Not exactly. Although the conditions encountered on this operation were extreme, it was an unexpected outcome that the team would be wiped out. We were only required to collect live data from the subjects.
Jill not only has to fend off zombies, bioengineered creatures, and Nemesis, but also an agent working undercover. The amount of problems seem insurmountable and very difficult. But luckily, one member of the mercenary group defects to help her. Carlos Oliveira. Carlos is actually one of my favorite Resident Evil characters that never reappears in the entire franchise. He presents a more realistic and down-to-earth personality of the events that unfold. Carlos kind of shines as a likable character when being pressed in dire circumstances. Plus, he puts reason back on the table for the situations that he encounters. The story for Resident Evil 3 Nemesis puts every Resident Evil video game into shame with the simple realization that a city can become a nightmare location. Not only that, but Nemesis himself is just plain terrifying. The 2 points of horror make a terrific adventure of survival while trying to escape for your life. The initial gameplay for Resident Evil 3 is vastly improved from the predecessors. The game houses much more than expected, with one giant scary element mixed in. The first time I played this game, I was immediately hooked over all of the Resident Evil games combined. The signature features for the Resident Evil franchise are the zombie enemies, weapons, puzzles, boss encounters, and, of course, the save rooms. Thank God they added these. But Resident Evil 3 Nemesis added a few more things into the mix that generate a great gaming experience. The first is the dodge ability. I wish to express my thanks and gratitude for the people that added the dodge ability. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis broke the formula for the Resident Evil games by adding an extra feature that the player can do to survive. Previous titles did not warrant this type of gameplay strategy, as you would just have to sit and take a hit from an enemy, or wait until you can move again entirely. Jill can acrobatically roll out of attacks, upping her cool factor by an exponent of 10. This gameplay feature makes playing Resident Evil 3 Nemesis a lot more fun. Additionally, thanks to the dodge ability, future titles of the franchise endorsed the feature and expanded the capability into melee attacks instead. But we do not actually see the dodge ability return until Resident Evil 6, which was 13 years later. The next gameplay element that is extremely important to note about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is Nemesis himself. Nemesis is not some plastered boss waiting for you to go to kill him like a scripted event. He is coming for you at any given moment. Nemesis randomly appears throughout your survival escape and is not a force to be reckoned with lightly. He comes armed with his fists or even a rocket launcher. Moreover, Nemesis changes his form to capture you more easily. What I ultimately want to say here is, Nemesis is the scariest thing ever in the Resident Evil franchise. Even if you do confront him and somehow get him to fall over, he does not die. Ever. He merely comes back to impede your progress after recovering. But the suspense of you not knowing when he will reappear makes Nemesis that much more scary. He will sometimes blaze into the area you are in and charge after you with all vengeance. Another thing that Resident Evil 3 Nemesis has that is never brought back into the series is the decision-making events. Contrary to what most fans of the Resident Evil franchise do not like about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, I actually like the decision-making elements. There is a type of risk-reward scale that you are offered at times for your gameplay performance. These moments feel like a decision rather than an annoyance. Some of the decisions up the scale of difficulty for the game, making the experience that much more engaging. Plus, they add replay value once you beat the game. The last thing to note about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is the fact that the game is based on a single character story with a side character being playable for a short segment. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was the first title in the franchise to house a single linear campaign about one character. There was not this mixed option to pick another character and see the story be played out in an entirely different way. I rather liked being Jill the majority of the game and being given a chance to play as Carlos when she was unavailable. The perspective felt more natural and engaging. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis continuously keeps the gameplay formula of survival horror video games fresh to this very day. Nemesis plays a huge role as being an absolute menace through the entire game, while Jill continues to show a more underdog approach while still being tactful with her dodging capability. I only wish to see more decision-making opportunities return rather than being herded around like some person who cannot challenge themselves further. Listen to this soundtrack for Resident Evil 3 Nemesis and tell me that this is not great music. The central idea for the theme is heavy, metallic, and fierce, as if to insinuate one thing about the game: Nemesis himself. There are many great soundtracks to this game. I will say this now. Capcom hires great musicians for their games. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis stands alone amongst the other titles in the franchise that depicts this type of tone in musical themes. I absolutely love this soundtrack. Actually, one of my favorite soundtracks is literally the first Nemesis encounter. The theme is a stark and horrific clash of metallic instruments coupled with a brazen electronic instrument. This theme spells the word fear in every sense. The somber theme of the City of Ruin is another favorite of mine. The best part of this soundtrack is the loud, bass-like beat that plays in sequence with the rest of the notes. Additionally, this song represents the tragedy that overtook Raccoon City in mere days. of course, the final Metamorphosis theme that plays when you are fighting against Nemesis one last time is a mix of epicness and tension. This blended mixture of tones really showcases how to make music feel like a theatrical fight for your life over a great evil. My overall favorite theme for the game, though, is the save room theme. Oddly enough, this song is comforting and deep, like a soft embracing scene, but with so much sadness. What I love most about this song is the theatrical essence pouring forth from the notes. I can get lost for hours listening to this song over and over. Music is an act of sheer will, which is the very nature of creation itself. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis houses the sheer will of what the Resident Evil franchise needed at the time. The theme and tone within the soundtrack is nothing short of just being brilliant. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis needed the heavy atmospheric theme to showcase the horrific aspects that can plague a metropolitan city, as well as set the tone to being on edge with Nemesis running around. Whether you can see the soundtrack the way I do or not, one thing is for certain: Resident Evil 3 Nemesis will remain symbolic to the franchise with this musical score. After the death of my father, I finally understood the reason for horror entertainment. At least, what my father was striving to achieve. Horror is not about being scared or getting terrified, but realizing that you can surmount the unknown. Overcoming the unknown is the fun of horror entertainment. Becoming scared enough to go and hide under the blankets like I did when I was little is still okay. People get scared of things. That is natural. But I learned to embrace a side of me I would never have known if I did not face the horror elements of entertainment. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is placed 5th on my list of top video games of all time. In other words, this game is among my top 5 video games of all time. I went from being a total wimp about horror video games to a total fanatic. I can only really thank the Resident Evil franchise and my dad for this outcome. The saddest part for me is that I want nothing more than to play a horror game with my dad. I know he and I would have stayed up all night playing these types of video games together in the dark. But now that he is in a better place, I will be sure to carry on his fascinated interest into the realm of horror in my heart. Thank you, Dad, for everything.